All right, next video. Let's see. Yeah. So this is why movie costumes look so weird now by Nowhere to Land.
I'm Batman.
What you're looking at right now is a pretty cool Batman costume. It's also, in a more significant way, one of the worst costumes ever put to film, and it didn't just change how this movie was made, it quite literally changed how movies costume their characters altogether. In fact, this movie right here, this Batman, was in a way a direct response to what went so wrong with this one. But it's not just the Bat. There's a trend in blockbuster movies across the board that's almost impossible to miss, and one you've probably already noticed. Why do movie costumes look so weird now? There are three fundamental issues that I think have changed the way characters and costumes are thought about in big budget films, and I think it all stems from what a costume should do. Number one, a costume should to an extent instantly communicate character. 80s films did this incredibly well, and it should feel—
Yo, to be honest, I don't think costumes are that bad now. I'm trying to think. Like in certain movies, yeah, they are maybe. Like in some Marvel movies, they're a little bit bland, but in general, overall, I think costumes are pretty good. I mean, I don't know if they're as iconic as they once were. I'm trying to think of like an iconic costume nowadays, and it's kind of hard to think of one, to be honest.
feel original to that character, unique, like Indy. He's a classic adventure hero, rugged, worn, and you see all of that, even in his silhouette. And as it takes inspiration from fiction before it, it still feels unique to him. Two, costumes need to reflect the world of the movie. Think of the used universe approach George Lucas took with the original Star Wars trilogy. And three, it should feel like a part of the movie's design, not a feat of design itself. Take the costuming in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, for instance.
Lord of the Rings has like the best costumes. That's my favorite movie of all time. I just think that movie is so perfect from all aspects. The actors that they chose for the roles are just so perfect. The costumes look so perfect. The way they film everything is just perfect to the film. The CGI is phenomenal for back then, and just the practical effects, like for the orcs, like it's hard to think of a better set design and costume design wardrobe for a movie than Lord of the Rings. Like even the Hobbits tried to make orcs. They don't even look nearly as good as they did in the Lord of the Rings.
Watch these movies and even for a second been removed from a scene to focus on what Frodo is wearing. It's in essentially all three of these ways that we see modern blockbusters.
Traitor!
Star Wars is actually a great place to start. Vader's costume is iconic. It blends its influences perfectly. Samurai armor,
I like Kylo Ren's costume. I think Kylo Ren is a good costume.
Nothing looked like him, and his silhouette, again, iconic.
That is an iconic silhouette.
But that became a problem decades later. Issue one with modern costuming is too many films use costumes as nostalgia bait instead of using them to communicate character. The Force Awakens is a prime example of this. J.J. Abrams stated that he wanted the sequel trilogy to feel like the original trilogy, so he used costuming as bait. Remember Luke? Yeah, so does Rey's costume. What about Han? The rugged bounty. Yep, that's the same vibe. What about Vader? Here's the cover song. What all these costumes really communicate is, look at how Star Warsy these look.
Right,
Not meet these new characters that are meant to stand on their own. Why do the Rebels—
They're not original, but at the same time, you know that a ton of fans are going to go crazy if they see something completely original in those universes. They're going to be like, this isn't the Star Wars I know. But to a certain point, if you want a movie to be iconic, you have to take risks. So it's a balance between, do you want it to be successful or do you want it to be iconic and have longevity? Maybe take a cut of the viewership in the short term so you then can have a longer tail of viewership in the long term and it becomes more iconic.
Underfunded and scrappy still have the same uniforms decades later.
That's how you get cult classics.
In the context of an evolving massive galaxy? Great question, but maybe that's just coincidence, a stagnant organization. Let's look at the First Order. This is functionally just a glossier, over-polished copy of the original Stormtrooper armor. This was part of Lucas's used universe, as he called it. It all felt cheap, mass-produced, mechanical, and these are the same idea without the personality and original thought. The problem is, these are all different characters in the same universe that Luke, Vader, and Han already exist in. This is not a reboot, it is a continuation. So why aren't they given costumes that treat them as such? Nostalgia. That's why. And as usual with big budget films, there's no middle ground. So issue 2 ends up being the opposite extreme.
What would you prefer? Yellow spandex?
These are the notorious leather X-Men suits. Suits that the director believed in so much he essentially mocked the audience for not wanting before the movie even hit screens. When rebooting something or remaking it, you typically want to do so out of love for the source material. These suits are a wild diversion from the source material, but are a clear, if failed, attempt at accomplishing the second thing movie costumes should do. Feel like an extension.
Yeah, you're not guaranteed to be iconic just because you're different.
What's confusing is, in a world with this, and this, and this, why would this have been so crazy? It wouldn't have been. See here, this is a bright yellow, tight, leather outfit and an extension of a world that just finished delivering an anime sequence. A world of heightened reality. This works. You can see this problem in a lot of places. Here in Lanterns, why would you ever make the first look at these characters look like this instead of this? We saw this in Fant Four Stick with Doctor Doom. These are costumes that want to be as grounded as their world.
Yeah, that's the thing.
But don't seem to understand the fantasy of their...
Yeah, like, so if you're trying to make a superhero movie realistic, you kind of lose some of the charm that superheroes have in general. And when I think of superheroes, I don't think of the real world. I don't think of like, how would this play out in the real world? I kind of want to go into a different world and see what's going on in that world. Like, I'm not expecting people to act how they would act in real life. I want to see it kind of like a comic book movie. Those are the movies that are more fun. If I'm seeing people jump around with like superpowers, I want to see color. I want to see like contrast and vibrant characters, vibrant costumes. I don't want to see like a gray drab. Like, that's what some of the early Marvel movies were. They were super drab.
But a better example might be Taskmaster from Black Widow.
Melina, this is the last time that we...
This is what Taskmaster looks like in the comics. This is a terrifying, dark costume, and it exists in a cinematic world where this was real. So how then is this Taskmaster costume an extension of the world as opposed to just being an over-designed attempt to look modern or grounded? And this attempt at modernity is the exact same problem these costumes had in the X-Men movies. Your worlds aren't modern. They have personality beyond existing today. So modern shouldn't be what your costumes give off. That should not be the goal. And yet, so many costumes.
Have you ever heard somebody reference some like social media, like some joke will be about social media in today's era, but the movie has nothing to do with that? It sort of takes you out of it. And it's like, why are you making that joke? Like, I know I live in that world. I know that these actors are living in that world, but we're trying to go into a different world. I don't want to hear you talk about Twitter or Instagram or making a post or having some reference about Gen Z or... Yeah, you can have plays on human experience and things like that, but it doesn't have to be tied to modern day and so tied down to pop culture.
But even if you haven't noticed,
stop breaking the fourth wall. I don't want to hear it anymore.
Absolutely have noticed the third, because it is by far the biggest reason that movie costumes have become so much less, well, interesting. What you're looking at right now is referred to as the Batman turn. This suit in Tim Burton's 1989's Batman was a disaster. Michael Keaton literally couldn't turn his head in it or even walk in a straight line normally. You can't watch the movie and not feel it. So the blocking in this movie is stiff, the fight choreography is slow, and every movement is just a little off. The suit was under-designed mechanically, and this is why Nolan gave his Batman a separate neck piece and face mask. Hollywood learned from this experience. But its limitations in being practical and handmade gave this Batman his own feeling, his own vibe. Weird as it may be, it kind of fit. They used it. Alien had a real person in the xenomorph, and it was a very difficult costume to move in. Filmmaking is just problem solving, so they got creative. They hid it in the shadows, emphasized the silhouette, and it moved slowly, menacingly. They used it. A New Hope also took advantage of its costume's practical limitations. Vader moves slowly and intentionally because the costume forces...
Yeah, that's one of the things is I never understood is like, how is Darth Vader the best Jedi or whatever, or the best Sith, when he moves so slowly? He's not agile at all. I just didn't understand how him fighting ever worked, because he just seems so slow and lethargic.
They made that part of his character. they used it. Costumes used to synergize with the filmmaking. Now, movies take the opposite approach. Movie costumes are dramatically over-designed way too frequently. We are in the era of costume maximalism in big movies. Let's start visually.
What ridiculous nonsense, Your Highness. He is obviously lying.
Here is Jafar. Bold, clean colors, simple silhouette. That's what gave him menace. Here he is in Disney's live-action Aladdin remake. This costume is his entire character design. There is no reason to complicate it to this degree. Thor, Love and Thunder's gold and blue suit. None of this makes any sense. It doesn't tell us anything, and it's so over-designed that you couldn't tell me one good reason for the existence of half of these patterns, or lines, or the circles, almost any of it.
Yeah, it
These
doesn't
are
seem
the Knights
functional.
of Ren. Concept art that basically just wandered into a movie. They aren't even really characters, but so much attention is drawn to their design when they're on screen. They're cool, but with no function. Not all too dissimilar from this. Why do all of this just to throw the character away?
Hey, I liked Captain Phasma's costume. I think that looks sick, though, to be honest. That costume's sick.
Your costuming calls attention to a character. It needs to be for a good reason. Otherwise, you've over-designed it. This was supposed to be the DCEU's take on Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns Batman. He looks like a Lego set. This doesn't even pretend to be
for
functional.
real.
Cruella
The
de Vil,
ears are
again,
way too small.
iconic,
He's got
bold.
baby ears.
And here she is in a trash dress in the live-action remake, or this manic piece of wardrobing. These are examples of costume over-design from a visual perspective, just for the sake of doing so. That doesn't support the film, it distracts. But the more unfortunate truth about the over-design maximalism of movie costumes today is more and more movies don't want to design real costumes anymore at all. As costumes lean more into over-design, we're losing what made these costumes special. They were real. You don't have
Yeah,
to look
it's all
that far back. You
CGI
don't have to
now.
go back to the 80s. In Captain America Civil War, Black Panther's suit was largely practical. It looked great. It grounded the character. A nice change of pace as the MCU began to experience a bit of power creep. Then somehow we get this CGI mess. Detached from the environment, detached from physical lighting. Marvel's even given their fancy liquid CGI an in-universe excuse: nanotechnology. This nanotech is just a fancy way of saying costuming is too difficult or expensive to do practically. This has a tangible impact on the filmmaking. If you feel at some point that the MCU turned into all-powerful space wizards exploding the world, part of that is because the movies stopped grounding themselves in the physical limitations of practical filmmaking and costuming. Costuming and practical costuming played a huge role in how authentic what you're watching felt. It is literally how you view characters. It also played a huge role in how you ground characters, how they move, how they behave, just like they would in real life. Movies now—
That's so interesting because on one hand, you want the movements and everything to be grounded, but you also don't want the movie to be too realistic, but they're picking and choosing the wrong decisions for where each is needed. In the costume, for it to look and feel real, it may have to be real. And that's why like Lord of the Rings works so much better than The Hobbit, is because they're not using as much CGI for the orcs.
aren't just removing that from their films, it's mixing and matching this over-designed CGI approach so things like this just feel a little uncanny. Or worse, altogether removed from reality. Theirs included. And these issues aren't hidden, with many other people like Brown Table pointing out these issues with the MCU over the last few years.
That is a stupid design, and your instructions were very unclear.
Unfortunately, it's hard to get away from the fact that no matter the amount of resources or time, costuming in film and TV has just gotten itself into a weird place, where it's slowly being used either as an extension of nostalgia or technology, or worse, as an extension of the world you're likely trying to escape by turning on your TV in the first place.
Exactly.
Costuming has started to slowly stop believing in its own magic, and its own practical uses. In fact, media in general is becoming—
Things nowadays don't even feel like costumes as much anymore. They feel more like outfits at some points than like a costume. I don't know. This is just so iconic. You'll have like a characteristic. Back then the costumes were almost like cartoons in the way that their outfits were just so iconic and recognizable and very one note, very simple. Didn't look like anything you could pull off the rack of Old Navy or something like that. Something that was very thought out and simple at the same time.
less about the magic of practical, tangible problem solving, and more about the miracle of using technology to avoid the problems altogether. And that sudden lack of friction is something you can feel on your screen.
What's up, guy with milk?
Look good, feel good is the old adage, but it turns out that feel good part sometimes requires something to feel. Your characters deserve better, and so do their costumes.
If you're nothing without this suit, then you shouldn't have it, okay?
All right, yeah. Hopefully costumes get a little bit better. I'm convinced now they're not as good as they used to be. I'm convinced. All right, next video.